Guys, we have a wonderful speaker coming up. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our next speaker. With over 10 years in education, George Austin calls himself a hype man who encourages students to continue learning by building their self-confidence. With 4 advanced degrees, including electrical engineering, you guys, which I would never touch with a 10-foot pole, it's clear George is a man who can motivate himself, too. Here is George Austin presenting Aircraft Carriers Stranded in the Desert.
Now is the time for a revolution. Now, I'm aware that walking on stage and calling for a revolution while being black can be hazardous. The last thing I want is for people to say, I thought the TED Talks were going great till the angry black man showed up. But at the risk of being labeled militant, I have to say now is the time for a revolution in education. Why? Because education's current model of technology integration is not working. We're providing students with access to computers for all the wrong reasons. And these misconceptions can have a negative impact on student development. For example, most people are impressed when they walk into a classroom and they see that every student has access to their own computer. One-to-one access may look good, but the question we must ask ourselves is, how is it helping students develop skills that will serve them post-graduation? We must heed the warning that was issued by Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know, the old guy from Star Wars. He said, your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them. I say, who cares how many computers your school has? If you want to impress me, teach your students to build their own computers. Schools cannot continue to treat technology the way that teenagers treat new clothes. We can't keep buying these devices simply because they're new, popular, and cool. And if we don't reverse course, then I fear that many students are going to find themselves in a situation similar to what I was once in. 20 years ago, long before I dreamed of becoming a teacher, I was a recent college graduate. I had majored in electrical engineering, so I assumed that I would have no trouble finding a job because people have always told me that students who major in science, technology, and engineering and mathematics have no trouble finding jobs and usually make lots of money. You see, I needed to make a lot of money. I had my eye on a convertible BMW. It was silver with black trim, black leather seats, and unfortunately it came with a price tag that had far too many black zeros. But I figured if I saved long enough and skipped meals every other day, eventually I would be able to afford that car. Soon all of my optimism and anticipation would turn to disappointment and confusion. A year goes by, and I still have not been able to find a job. Oh, I've been on several interviews, but those interviews usually ended in the same manner, with someone explaining to me that the company was looking for someone who had experience. And my response was always, how can I gain experience if no one is willing to give me a chance? Then one day it happened. I come home and I have a voicemail from a human resources representative. It seems their company wanted me to come in for a second interview. Finally, this is it. I'm about to get paid. I'm about to get this paper. Or so I thought. The next day I return the gentleman's phone call and he greets me with a sigh, which is not a good sign. He then proceeds to explain to me that he just received an email stating that the company was implementing a hiring freeze. And as a result, the job that he was about to offer me was now no longer available. Needless to say, I was crushed. I started looking around. At any moment, I was expecting Ashton Kutcher to walk out and tell me I had just been punked. Unfortunately, this was not some elaborate prank. I had not been punked, and Ashton Kutcher was nowhere to be found. Employers wanted someone who could come in and make an immediate impact. I simply didn't have the skills. The only thing I had was the degree that sits atop the bookshelf in my parents' house. I finally had to come to terms with the fact that my education had failed me. It had failed to prepare me for the job market. When I think about the relationship between technology and education, it reminds me of an aircraft carrier that has been stranded in a desert. It takes a wealth of resources to build and sustain an aircraft carrier, yet those resources are wasted if the vehicle is not placed in a large body of water. Just like aircraft carriers, computers, laptops, tablets are expensive, and currently students are not using these devices in ways that maximizes their potential. In most cases, students only use computers to access social media and download movies, videos, and games. And then when they do use these devices for academic purposes, it's usually just to Google research terms. But it's up to us as parents, educators, and stakeholders to establish a clear vision for technology's purpose in our schools. We also have to accept that simply supplying students with access to computers does not ensure that they will be successful. I'm going to repeat that for emphasis. Simply supplying students with access to computers does not ensure that they will be successful. Remember, I had experience using all types of devices, but I didn't have skills that employers felt were valuable. How many people can say that they have programmed a digital book complete with narration? You know those books when you open them and a voice starts reciting the text? What about iPads? Who really understands how the touch screen on an iPad works? Considering the extent to which we use technology, don't you think it's time that schools started teaching students how to plan, develop, and build these devices? I want to share with you how computer coding is doing just that. Computer coding is the step-by-step process of writing instructions that tell a computer what to do. Cell phones, software, and video games all work because of computer code. Let's explore storytelling. Now, how is writing a story using computer code any different than writing a story using pen and paper? Well, pen and paper only allows the author to create text and drawings. Computer coding adds another dimension to storytelling. It allows the author to combine sound, video, and text. This process allows students to open up and share in ways that would have been impossible several years ago. Imagine the impact it would have if a student is able to walk into a job interview and present a multimedia book that they've created, where you press a button and a voice begins to recite the text. Press another button and music begins to play. Press yet another button and the text changes to another language. I envision a future where students will no longer take paper and pencil assessments. Instead, they would develop devices that showcase their understanding of learning standards. Rather than recite their multiplication tables, they will build touch screens that teach others how to multiply and divide. We have to move the metaphorical aircraft carrier to an environment that takes advantage of its unique capabilities. And by doing so, we will provide students with an education that prepares them for the future, an education that supports their cognitive development, and an education that will allow them to be able to afford that convertible BMW. Thank you.
Hold my coffee. Someone please take my coffee. I'm coming.